Hi everybody, it's Dawn. This is a very brief video just to circle back to something I actually left off of one of the recent Galactic videos, and I thought it was a good day to share this with you. It's about creativity, which is what I've been in the midst of today. I'll say just first off, personally, creativity, creative expression of all kinds. I'm a writer and an artist, and I like to dabble in photography and poetry, although both poetry and photography non-conventional, I would say. Artist, I try. These are all in progress. And I was I just had to do Ireland again today, so I'm working on 3 large-scale Ireland paintings, and then that one is different. And creativity, though, creative expression of all kinds has saved me in my life since I was a small child. I began when I was very young, at a very traumatic early childhood, and I began to use my imagination to literally stay alive. And a lot of times what I would be imagining was, and I don't know if this is typical for all children, if it was just the way I was wired, but I would imagine bringing the world to life in beautiful ways. So I would imagine the most beautiful things like butterflies and rainbows and stars and all the things I loved, grass and wind. And well, I guess you can't really, wind doesn't have a color, but I would imagine adding other touches to reality, essentially. And that, honestly, that helped me to stay alive when I was very young and enduring some very difficult circumstances. And then later in life, I definitely became interested in writing stories and poems and other kinds of things when I was, 8, 9, 10, around that age. And I kept that up pretty much all of my life. And I weave in and out of different kinds of writing and different kinds of expression through writing or speaking. And that has served me well also, because it allows me to express. And I was a person who felt like I couldn't express in my own family and other circumstances that I was placed in early on. And so it really has saved me. And the part that I forgot to discuss in one of those recent videos about creativity, that is something that is coming through very strongly in terms of the galactic messages and the 5 beings that I've mentioned before. Sorry about my voice. I don't know if it's paint or if it was something I got when I was outside earlier that's allergy, but it's it's definitely husky. So what was I saying? Galactic messages. Oh yes, they have shown me how, in addition to the spiritual gifts coming online, many of us will naturally, as we shed what no longer serves us and open our hearts and connect back to our heart space and let that lead us as much or more so than we've allowed our minds to lead us, we will naturally connect to our creativity. And that also has been my experience in the last 10 years or so. I think it was when, right before I went to Ireland, so around 2014, I really got back into my little doodling practice that I call soul essence art exploration. I'll put links below so you can, just see what how I express my own creativity. And I am very versatile, and I like to call it multidisciplinary. Nice official word, but technically speaking, I just have a short attention span and I have to, mix it up and do a lot of different things. But when I really dipped back into my own creativity around 2014, and then when I moved to Ireland, I was so inspired by the land, and it felt like home to me in many ways, that I started painting when I was there. And when I did that, I noticed something right away, particularly with the visual expression for me, that I hadn't done in a long time for a lot of reasons. And I'll just share, a lot of us don't do this because we've been told, you're not good enough, you're not serious, oh my goodness, that's so, I don't know the words that people would use, but over the top, too much color, wear your pale colors, and with the writing even. And so many of us, if we are creative, we keep it like hold away and we don't want to share it. But what I've been shown in terms of the galactic messages of what is the opportunity for humanity in general in the next 3 to 5 years, roughly speaking, is this essentially a renaissance, potentially. It's a potential. It depends. It depends on what we all choose individually and then collectively, of course. But it's a really beautiful picture that I've been shown, and it reminds me very much of how after I was out of the trauma period when I was very young, but I would still imagine really interesting combinations of things and that were essentially playing with reality. And I didn't know any better. And by the time somebody told me I shouldn't be doing that, I was a teenager. And that was just making me want to do it more at that point. So I was all in for creating things, but I like to create new combinations, not necessarily a little bit in my art, but more so in, when I create a product or an solution, I like to combine different things. It's why in the beginning, before I was over the whole consumerism, I was in advertising a long time ago. When I first graduated for a year or two, I did advertising and PR. And then even after that, when I left my nonprofit communications job, I had my own business. And in the first 2 years, I was all corporate copywriting and advertising. And I would go, I liked the thrill of the hunt sort of. And so I would go, land these really interesting clients that I had no experience in whatsoever, like the Bankers Bank, or some financial ones are the best example because I had at that point, zero understanding whatsoever. But I trusted my ability to combine unique concepts, and I did well with that. And then later, I circled back to how I was as a child, where I literally would be playing with ideas that would, in my heart and mind, improve reality or make it different or make it interesting. And that's something that to this day I really love. I just love thinking about things like that. And I love when I'm sitting outside sometimes, I'll be looking at the birds and I'll think, and the birds and the rabbits, and I'll think, wouldn't it be interesting if the birds were over here in this grassy area with the rabbits, and mixing two things together that don't necessarily go together. I know that was a really goofy example, but point being that what they have shown me about this potential for a creative renaissance for humanity, it really comes down to this. Can we allow ourselves to play and be curious again about life, about possibilities, and not be so attached to, is it going to make me money? Or in my case, I'm always like, I can't get rid of all these things, and now there's too much stuff, and I'm constantly, going back to that panic feeling, and I'm learning to just let go of things or paint over. But there are all kinds of reasons we delay our creative expression. Most common ones are, perfection. Space can be a big one for a lot of people. Money can certainly be a big one. Materials can cost something. Find ways that you can begin small by tapping into play and curiosity. So if you work elsewhere, a full-time job, and you don't have time, really, or space during the week, then just take an hour on the weekends. And literally, if you do nothing but get a little sketch pad and sketch, I was going to show you, but it's buried over there. If you just get a sketch pad or a doodle or an iPad and use Procreate, which is a $10 app to doodle on, or just think, let your mind and heart open and wander and think about new possibilities. Like, what if water was rainbow colored? I'm just making that up. I'm looking at a little statue of a deer over here. So what if the deer could talk? What would he say to me? And I could write something about that. So I just wanted to do this short video to encourage everybody to really, allow yourself to get curious again, to remember what you loved as a child and begin to play with different ideas, different ways of being creative, different ways of expressing what's in your heart. And it can be serious ideas too. As you know, sometimes here on my YouTube channel, I'm sharing quite serious videos, or even in my poems, some of them are very serious, and then some of them are silly, and some of them. And so that's the other thing I would encourage you to do is don't put limits. If you're going to have a business, art business, and it's your primary source of income, then that's a little different. But in general, in terms of your creative expression, don't put limits on it. Let yourself just like explore. I used to have this thing I would talk about. I should see if it's still available. I'd be happy to share it for free. Anyway, I had a company called Creative Revolutions for about 20 years, and I called it my Creative Revolution Cycle. And it was explore, discover, create, connect. And when I used to lead creativity workshops, that's what I would take people through, that process of, the first 2 steps, explore and discover, zero attachment. You just play. You just play with combinations. You just imagine. You just let yourself have free reign. And if you end up with a complete mess that you throw in the trash, it's fine, because the process has value. That's another thing that the galactic messages, and I'll probably will circle back to this one a little bit later, because it does tie into something else they were showing me. But I just really wanted to share it because this Renaissance idea, from what I understand from what they were sharing, this period that we're in right now, July, August, September, is really pivotal. What we all choose individually and collectively affects everything from here forward. So that's why I wanted to do this. And also because I was in that mode today, just like clearly all over the place. There's more, but I'll spare you. It's a time right now to let yourself just be a kid. And just, if you're one of those people that feels like you don't have a creative bone in your body, then just allow your mind to wander and imagine, tap into your imagination. Or if you are connected to your intuition, follow your intuition and let it just lead you to pick a color, any kind of medium, like, paint, crayons, markers, highlighters. It could be anything. And get a blank piece of paper and just one color at a time and just see what comes out. Or do Zen tangles or other kinds of meditative journaling, or so if you can do writing this way as well, or meditative drawing, doodling, all kinds of things. If you're into music, you can also, write a song, lyrics or music, or just do a rhythm. These days with the AI stuff, I'm sure you can create a whole song just by like doing your little beatbox thing I'll have to try that actually, because I'm always frustrated. I do write lyrics a lot, and I'm always frustrated because the musicians I know, the ones still alive and the ones that I've lost, were like, no, I don't think I'm going to write music for that. But I always wanted a partner. I did actually have one about 30 years ago. I wrote a few songs with somebody who was a musician, but that's another thing you can play with. So do it this week. Find some time, literally, even if it's 10 minutes, and I'll circle back with the more serious connections. It does connect to the spiritual gifts that I've shared about in terms of the galactic messages for the next several months into the next 3 years. And also it connects to some of the options and possibilities that we have collectively that can literally change so much and open so much up to us. So it's another good reason to connect to that heart space and create.